Dad told me to stay away from Mom's party, and he said it like it was a simple instruction, like he was reminding me to take out the trash or check the mailbox, but the words hit my chest like a silent blow because I had spent the whole week imagining how Mom would smile when she saw me walk through the door with her favorite vanilla cake and a bouquet of fresh lilies I picked because she once said lilies made her feel calm after long days. But all of that hope fell apart the moment he texted me that I was not welcome anymore and that the family had voted me out, and it felt strange because I did not even know we were at a place where family made decisions like a courtroom and decided who got to belong and who did not, and I sat on the edge of my small couch staring at the phone screen trying to make sense of that strange harsh sentence while the evening sun faded behind the apartment buildings outside my window, turning everything into a dull shade of gray, and the silence in my apartment made me feel like I was shrinking into myself because I never thought a day would come when my own dad would tell me to stay away from my mom on her birthday, a day that she always said was not about getting older but about celebrating the fact that she had survived another year and found strength in moments that felt impossible. I tried calling him and the phone kept ringing until he finally picked up, and his voice was cold and flat like he had already practiced what he wanted to say, and there was no space for love, only rules and decisions. And he told me that the family had talked about me and how I had caused too much tension, and that they all agreed the celebration would be better if I did not show up, and the way he said it made me feel like I was being erased not just from a party but from the picture of who they were as a family, like they had drawn a line and pushed me to the outside, and I wanted to fight back. I wanted to tell him that all I ever tried to do was make them proud, but the words sat in my throat unmoving and painful, and I listened as he explained it was for the best and that Mom needed peace and I should respect that, and I wanted to scream that Mom would never say that because Mom was the kind of person who stayed up late with me when I was a scared kid fearing thunderstorms or when I felt lost in college because nothing made sense, and she would hold my hand and remind me that I mattered even when I did not feel it. But now I was being told she wanted peace without me, and that broke something deep inside my chest like a small crack spreading through glass. I asked him if she knew, and he hesitated for a second, so quiet that I could hear my own breathing, and he finally said she knew what was best for the family, and the way he avoided answering made the truth too clear. Maybe she did not know, maybe she had no idea that the people around her had decided for her, who got to be part of her day. Maybe she was in the kitchen right now humming like she always did when she cooked her favorite apple pie, unaware that the same people she raised with love were shutting the door on her own child, and that thought made my heart twist because I knew Mom and I knew she would never choose silence over her child. Even if I had made mistakes, even if I had disappointed the family in ways they still held onto like old photographs that refused to fade. I sat there thinking about the last few years, all the arguments, all the distance, all the ways I tried to rebuild something that felt fragile and constantly slipping away, and I wondered when exactly I became a problem instead of a person, because I never meant to create conflict. I never meant to be the reason things felt heavy inside our home. And I remembered the night my siblings told me I was too emotional, too sensitive, too complicated, and how I laughed it off even though it hurt because I thought siblings were supposed to hold each other tightly, but maybe they held tightly to each other and not to me, and that made me feel like I had been walking with them on a long road, only to realize one day that I had drifted too far behind for them to turn around and notice. As I sat with all those thoughts swirling like a storm, I imagined Mom blowing out candles without me standing beside her, and that image felt wrong, like a picture with a missing corner. And I wondered if she would think of me when she made her wish, because every year she said she wished for the strength to keep her family close, and now that very family had pushed me out, and it felt like a betrayal wrapped in politeness delivered through a simple text message, and I stared at the screen again, reading his words over and over until the letters began to blur because my eyes were tired and heavy and filled with a sting that I refused to let fall. I thought about showing up anyway, just walking through the door and telling them I deserved to be there because I loved her, because she was my mom, because no matter how complicated things became between us, love was never the part that failed. But I also knew how they would look at me with that tight silence, like I had ruined everything simply by existing. And I did not want to ruin her day with tension, so I sat there feeling like someone had emptied the world around me, leaving only the sound of my own heartbeat, too loud, too lonely, too lost. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time I felt like part of the family, and the only moment that came to mind was a Christmas morning years ago when we all sat around the fireplace drinking hot chocolate and laughing about the size of the tree Dad had picked, and Mom said it did not matter because the tree was just a tree. What mattered was that we were together, and I held on to that memory because it felt warm and real, unlike everything happening now and I wished I could go back to. That moment, freeze it, keep it forever, because it felt like proof that we were once something whole, something unbroken, something worth holding. I wondered if they knew how deeply their decision cut into me, if they understood that they were not just keeping me out of a house but out of a moment I could never get back, and I doubted they thought about it at all, because for them it was easy to vote someone out when they convinced themselves it was for the good of the family, and maybe they believed it, maybe they truly thought I was the reason things fell apart, but I also knew families rarely admit when they fail someone, and it was easier for them to blame me than face their own cracks. I sat in the dim light of my apartment with the phone still in my hand, and I felt this heavy pressure in my chest, like someone had placed a weight on my ribs, and every breath reminded me of the emptiness settling inside me. And I kept thinking about how families were supposed to fight for each other and stand for each other, and work through the hard moments, not vote someone out like a stranger applying for a position they were never qualified for. And I wondered when my place in the family became something they believed they could take away, and I tried to retrace every mistake I made, but the truth was nothing felt big enough or cruel enough to deserve being pushed out of my mother's birthday, a day that should have been filled with love and laughter, not exclusion and rejection. And as I sat there, I could almost hear her voice calling my name the way she used to when I walked through the front door, and she hugged me too tightly, like she was afraid I would disappear. And the memory of that kind of love made the silence of my apartment feel even colder. A part of me wanted to believe that Dad was lying or twisting things to protect someone, maybe even himself, but deep down I knew it was not a lie, because it sounded exactly like something my siblings would do when they felt overwhelmed by emotions they never learned how to handle. And I remembered all the times they told me I needed to grow up or be less dramatic or stop bringing up old wounds, and every time they said those things I pretended it did not affect me. But the truth was, those words broke little pieces inside me, until one day I realized I had been walking on shattered parts of myself for years. And now those pieces cut deeper, because the people meant to help me heal had chosen to send me away instead. I walked around the apartment trying to shake off the ache building inside my chest, and I stopped by the small kitchen counter where the birthday card I bought for Mom still sat untouched, and I picked it up and looked at the soft blue cover with simple gold lettering that said, "You deserve the world," and I had written inside it the night before, telling her how much I loved her, how much she meant to me, and how grateful I was for every sacrifice she made through the years. And it hurt knowing she might never read those words, not because she would not want to, but because someone else had decided she should not see them. And that thought made my hands tremble as I held the card, wondering if I should send it anyway, or keep it as another sad reminder of a moment that never happened. I stared at the lilies on the table, the ones I bought for her because she loved their scent, and I thought about how she would gently place them in a vase near the window where sunlight made everything feel gentle and whole, and the idea that those flowers would never make it into her hands made my throat tighten, because they were not just flowers, they were a symbol of a connection I had been trying to hold on to even when everything else felt like it was slipping. And now even that small gesture felt stolen from me, and I wondered if she was somewhere in the house right now, feeling like something was missing without knowing it was me. I sat back down as the room darkened, and the only light left was from a small lamp that flickered sometimes because the bulb was old and needed replacing, but I never bothered to change it because I got used to that soft, unreliable glow. And in a strange way, it felt like my connection with my family flickering between hope and disappointment, never steady, never bright, never reliable. And the longer I stared at that fading light, the more I realized that maybe my biggest mistake was believing that love alone could keep a family together, when in reality families fall apart quietly through small losses, through misunderstandings, through moments of silence that stretch too far until you look up and realize you are standing on the outside of something you once belonged to. Suddenly I felt this wave of sadness crash through me, and I leaned forward, covering my face with my hands because I did not know how to hold it anymore, and I felt the sting in my eyes finally spill, because there was only so much anyone could hold without breaking, and I let myself cry in a way I had not done in years, not because I was weak but because everything I tried to be for them fell apart and the hurt had nowhere else to go, and I cried for the memories of Mom holding me during storms, and for the birthdays I would not share with her, and for the version of me that still believed my family would one day see that I was trying, and for the truth that trying was never enough for them. After the tears dried a little, I sat back breathing slowly, and I realized something painful but honest, that maybe they did not understand me because they never tried to, and maybe I kept waiting for acceptance from people who had already decided I was too much or too different or too complicated. And I felt a strange calm settle over me, not because the pain was gone but because I finally acknowledged what I spent years avoiding, that I could not make them love me the way I loved them, and I could not force my place in a family that voted based on convenience instead of connection. Yet even with that realization, I could not shake the thought of Mom sitting at the table surrounded by people who believed she needed protection from her own child, and the idea felt wrong, like someone rewriting a story that was never theirs to touch. And I wondered if she would feel that tiny tug in her heart, the one you feel when something is missing even if you cannot name it. And I hoped she would, because I wanted to believe that somewhere deep inside her, she still felt the same bond that kept us close even when life pushed us apart. I stood up again because the heaviness in the room felt unbearable, and I opened the window, letting the cold night air in brushing against my skin like a reminder that the world was bigger than my pain. And I looked at the city lights in the distance, blinking like tiny promises that life could change and people could heal, and maybe one day my family would see me the way Mom once did, with softness, with understanding, with love that did not require perfection. And as I stood there breathing in the cold air, I whispered into the night a quiet birthday wish for Mom, because even if I could not be there, even if they shut me out, I wanted her to feel the love I carried for her everywhere I went. I closed the window and walked back to the table where the lilies still rested, and I felt a strange pull inside me telling me that even if I was not allowed to be there physically, my heart was still wrapped around my mother in ways no text message or family vote could weaken. And I thought about driving to the house anyway, not to walk inside or challenge anyone, but just to sit outside for a moment and feel close to her, even if she never knew I was there. And the idea felt both comforting and painful, because I wanted to see her smile through the window. I wanted to hear her laughter rise above the noise of the celebration. But I also knew seeing all of it from a distance might break me even more, so I stood there unsure of what to do, feeling like every choice led to another kind of ache. And yet something inside me whispered that love was not supposed to be easy. Love was supposed to be steady, even when hearts cracked open. The apartment felt smaller with every minute that passed, and I kept imagining how the evening was unfolding at the house where I grew up. I pictured the living room lit with warm yellow bulbs, the way Mom liked, because she said bright white lights made everything feel cold, and she always wanted family moments to feel soft and comfortable. And I imagined her wearing the simple blue sweater she chose for every birthday because she said it made her feel peaceful, and I hoped she still felt that peace, even if I was not there. But I could not stop thinking about the possibility that she might look around the room and wonder why I was missing, and maybe she would ask Dad or my siblings, and maybe they would tell her that I had other plans, or that I did not show interest, or that I forgot, and all of those lies would hurt her in ways she would never show until she was alone in her room, thinking about how motherhood stretches your heart in every direction, even the ones that ache the most. I walked into the hallway and looked at the small mirror hanging beside the door, and for a moment I barely recognized myself, not because my face had changed, but because the weight of disappointment had carved something new into my expression, something tired and soft and wounded. And I touched the mirror lightly, as if steadying the reflection, and whispered to myself that I was still whole even if I did not feel like it, and I knew I had to remind myself that my worth was not measured by a family vote or by the cold words of a father who forgot how to love a child who needed a gentler kind of understanding. And I reminded myself that I had grown into someone who survived more than they ever knew, someone who carried his own battles without asking them to shoulder the weight. I stepped back and grabbed my keys, because sitting in the apartment felt like sinking, and I needed air, I needed movement, I needed to remind myself that the world did not end just because they shut one door. And I walked down the hallway and into the night, where the cool air brushed against my skin like quiet encouragement, and I got into my car, sitting behind the wheel in silence for a moment, letting the engine hum settle something inside me. And without fully deciding, I started driving, streets lit by scattered streetlights guiding me through familiar paths that held memories of childhood laughter and teenage arguments, and quiet moments when life felt simple and love felt unconditional. As I drove past the park where Mom used to take me after school, I felt another wave of emotion rise inside me because I could see her in my memory sitting on a bench with her hair tied back watching me run toward the swings with the kind of joy only kids understand, and she always kept an extra snack in her purse because she said growing kids needed fuel to stay happy, and I smiled through the ache because those moments were proof that she loved me fiercely, and I knew deep down she would never choose to push me out of her life, not for a birthday, not for peace, not for anything. And the thought made me tighten my grip on the steering wheel as I realized that maybe the people who voted me out were not trying to protect her but themselves. I slowed down when I reached the neighborhood where I grew up, and everything looked so familiar yet so far away, like a place that belonged to a version of me who no longer existed. And the houses were quiet and lit gently, and I recognized the porch lights, the trees lining the sidewalks, the cracks in the pavement from years of weather and memories. And when I reached my parents' house, I parked across the street, far enough to stay unseen but close enough to feel the gravity of the place that shaped me in ways I was still trying to understand. And I turned off the engine, letting the silence settle around me like a blanket of mixed emotions. The house glowed softly from inside, and I could see shadows moving through the curtains, figures laughing, gathering, celebrating, and for a moment I imagined Mom smiling wide, surrounded by the people she loved, and a small part of me felt relieved because even if I was not there, she deserved happiness, she deserved warmth, she deserved a night filled with joy. But as I sat there, another part of me felt invisible, like the world continued spinning without acknowledging the piece of me that still longed for connection, still longed for belonging, still longed for the comfort of family that did not see me as a burden. I leaned back in the seat, resting my head for a moment, and I whispered a quiet "Happy birthday, Mom," and the words felt tender, like a small offering to the night, and I hoped somehow she would feel them in her heart the way mothers sometimes sense things without explanation. And I imagined her pausing in the middle of the celebration, feeling a strange tug, like something important was missing, and I hoped that feeling would make her look toward the door even if she did not know why, because I wanted to believe that even if the world tried to separate us, the bond between a mother and child was something deeper, something sacred, something no family vote could break. I sat there in the quiet street, listening to the distant sounds of laughter drifting through the slightly open window of my parents' house, and every soft echo felt like a reminder that life was moving on without me. And I wondered if they even noticed my absence, or if they had already convinced themselves that removing me made things easier. And I felt this deep ache in my chest because family was not supposed to choose the easier path. Family was supposed to choose the honest path, the loving path. The path where everyone fought to stay together even when it hurt. And as I looked at the glowing windows, I wondered how many years it had been since any of them truly saw me, not the version they held onto or the version they criticized, but the real me who tried so hard to belong even when the doors kept closing. I felt my heartbeat slowing as the cool air drifted into I felt my heartbeat slowing as the cool air drifted into the car, and I let myself sit in the moment, letting the quiet become a kind of comfort. And for a long time I watched the house where I spent countless nights safe under the same roof as the people who now saw me as someone who threatened their peace. And I wondered if peace built on exclusion was even real, or if it was just another fragile illusion that would eventually crack under the weight of avoided truths and buried feelings. And I wished I could tell them that silencing someone does not heal anything, it only creates deeper cuts that take longer to mend. As I sat there, I remembered the last conversation I had with Mom a few weeks ago when she called me just to check in, and her voice sounded warm and familiar. And she told me she missed me and asked if I had been eating well and taking care of myself, and I told her I was trying, and she laughed softly, that sweet sound I grew up loving, and she said trying was enough for now. And I wondered how someone with so much warmth could ever want me gone from her birthday, and I knew deep down that she did not want that. She did not know that the people around her were deciding for her, rewriting the narrative, shaping the story into one that made me the outsider. And I felt anger mixed with sadness because I wanted to protect her from that manipulation, but I also knew my presence would only cause them to twist the situation more. I leaned forward, placing my hands on the steering wheel, and I closed my eyes, imagining her inside the house, maybe sitting at the table cutting her birthday cake, maybe thanking everyone for being there, maybe making a wish with her eyes closed. And I wondered if somewhere in the quiet corners of her heart she wished for her family to feel whole again. And I wondered if she felt the missing piece, even if she could not name it, because mothers carry their children in places words cannot fully reach. And I thought about how she always prayed for her family too. stay close even during arguments, even during storms, and I hoped that tonight her wish carried my name even if she whispered it silently. I opened my eyes and felt the first sting of tears returning because the longer I sat there the more I felt that distance growing between me and the home I once believed would always have space for me, and I wondered if some families only loved the version of you that made sense to them and turned away the moment you became complicated or emotional or different, and I wondered if I had spent too long chasing acceptance from people who never understood the way my heart worked and maybe never wanted to, and the thought hurt, but it also felt like truth, something raw, something sharp, something I had been avoiding for years. The porch light flickered gently and I watched it silently like a small symbol of home that no longer belonged to me, and I remembered countless nights sitting there waiting for Mom to open the door because I forgot my keys or because I wanted to talk to her about something that felt heavy on my heart, and she always opened the door with sleepy eyes and a soft smile, and she never made me feel like a burden, and those memories built the foundation of who I became, someone who believed in showing up for the people you love, someone who believed in forgiving even when it hurt, someone who believed in the power of connection even when the world felt lonely, and I wondered if those parts of me were too overwhelming for my family, or if they just never learned how to hold a heart like mine. As the night grew deeper and the air grew colder, I remained parked across the street, unable to drive away because a part of me needed to be close just for this one night, just for this one moment, even if no one knew, and I thought about how love sometimes means standing outside watching from a distance and holding your feelings quietly because barging in would only cause more hurt, and maybe choosing not to walk into the fire was its own kind of strength, even if it felt like weakness from the outside. And as I sat there I felt a strange quiet peace settle inside me, not because things were okay but because I had finally accepted what I could not change. I whispered again, "Happy birthday, Mom," and this time my voice cracked, but I let it because feelings were not meant to be swallowed and hidden away, and I imagined her hearing it somehow, as if love could stretch across the dark street and through the walls of the house and reach her heart even if my presence could not, and I wished with everything inside me that she felt loved tonight, not just by the people around her but by me too, by the child she nurtured and carried and fought for through so many years, and I wished she knew that I was here sitting quietly because showing up was the only way I knew how to love. I stayed parked there for what felt like hours, watching the soft movement of shadows inside the house, and each passing moment felt heavier because I kept imagining what it would feel like to walk through that door again and hear Mom call my name and wrap me in a hug that could fix things I did not know how to fix on my own, and the thought of being so close yet so far made the ache inside me grow like a slow burning fire, and I wondered if this was how distance worked, not measured in miles but in the way people decided you were too difficult or too emotional or too different to fit into their picture. And the truth settled heavy on my shoulders as I stared at the familiar house that once felt like a sanctuary and now felt like a place I was no longer allowed to enter. I watched as someone opened the front door for a moment, letting warm light spill onto the porch, and I could hear faint laughter floating into the night, and it felt like someone had taken a memory from my chest and placed it right in front of me but behind a wall I could not cross, and I saw my younger sister step outside holding a phone, and she looked so carefree, so wrapped in the celebration that she did not even glance toward the street, and I wondered if she ever thought about me tonight or if she had already convinced herself that leaving me out was the right decision, the practical decision, the easy decision, and I realized how easy it was for them to forget that I had spent years loving them fiercely even when I felt invisible. As she walked back inside and the door closed again, I felt something shift inside me, a quiet acceptance mixed with a grief I did not have the words for, and I leaned my head back against the seat, staring through the windshield at the glow of the house, and I realized that sometimes family stops being home long before they tell you to leave, and maybe the reason it hurt so deeply tonight was because I had been holding on to the last pieces of a bond that had already cracked long before this birthday. And I had been pretending that with enough effort I could patch it together, but life does not work like that. People need to meet you halfway, and my family chose to walk in the opposite direction. I reached for the birthday card on the passenger seat, the one with the words "You deserve the world" printed in delicate gold, and I opened it again, reading the message I wrote with so much hope the night before when I believed I would hand it to her in person and watch her eyes soften the way they always did whenever I expressed my feelings openly, and I ran my thumb over the ink that carried pieces of my heart, and I whispered the words to myself, hoping somehow they would reach her even without the card in her hands, and I felt tears gather again, but I did not wipe them away because they carried truth, they carried love, they carried the pieces of me that still belonged to her, even if the rest of the family decided otherwise. As I sat there, I thought about how strange it was that the people who claim to know you best can also misunderstand you the deepest, and I wondered if they ever stopped to ask themselves why I tried so hard, why I cared so intensely, why. I reacted with such emotion to every shift in our relationships, and the answer was simple. I wanted closeness, I wanted connection, I wanted to feel like I mattered beyond my mistakes and flaws, and somehow that desire had been twisted into something negative, something dramatic, something inconvenient, and I wondered if they would ever see that my heart was not a burden, it was a gift, even if they never learned how to receive it. I took a slow breath, feeling the cool air seep through the cracked window, and I let it ground me because I needed something steady, something real, something not shaped by the judgment of people who had forgotten how to love without conditions. And I told myself quietly that even if this night felt like a loss, it was not the end of my story, that I could still build a life filled with love and connection with people who understood the way my heart worked, with friends or future family who would not vote me out when things grew heavy. And as the thought settled inside me, I felt a small spark of strength grow, even though the sadness still pulsed through me. I looked at the house one last time, knowing that staying any longer would only deepen the ache, and I whispered a final "Happy birthday, Mom," into the night, letting the words drift toward the house like a soft prayer. And I hoped with everything inside me that her heart would catch even the faintest echo of my love, because she deserved to know that no matter how far life pushed us apart, I would always hold her close in the quiet corners of my soul. And I started the car, listening to the gentle rumble of the engine before pulling away from the curb, leaving behind the warm glow of the home that no longer felt like mine. As I drove away from the house, the streets felt strangely empty, like the world had gone quiet just to mirror the hollow space opening inside me. And each passing streetlight cast soft shadows across the dashboard, reminding me of all the nights I drove home from that same house with a full heart and a sense of belonging. And now the road felt longer, colder, heavier, and I kept thinking about how life changes in ways you never expect, how one message from Dad could crack something so deep inside you that even the familiar comfort of driving felt unfamiliar. And I wondered if they had any idea how deeply their decision cut into me, or if their lives continued untouched by the storm they created inside me. I stopped at a red light and stared at the faint reflection of myself in the windshield, and I could see the exhaustion in my eyes, not the physical kind but the emotional kind that settles into your bones and makes even simple movements feel heavy. And I whispered to myself that I would be okay, even if I did not believe it fully, because sometimes you need to plant the words first before you feel them grow. And the light turned green, but I did not move right away because I needed a moment to gather the pieces of my heart that had shattered quietly in the dark street outside my parents' house. And I needed to remind myself that even though they shut me out tonight, I was still worthy of being loved. I finally pressed the gas and the car moved through the quiet neighborhood, and as I passed the park again, I slowed down, remembering the simplest moments that made life feel warm and whole, like running across the grass as a child while Mom watched with soft eyes, or eating ice cream together on hot summer days, or talking to her about school and heartbreaks and dreams that felt too big. And I felt tears rise again because those memories were so full of love that it hurt knowing how far we had drifted, not by choice but by the decisions of people who never understood the fragile beauty of those moments. And I wished I could freeze time, go back to when Mom could fix everything with a hug and a gentle word. As I reached the edge of town, I felt my phone buzz in my pocket, and my heart jumped, hoping maybe, just maybe, it was Mom. Maybe she realized something was wrong, maybe she felt that tug in her heart and wanted to hear my voice. And I pulled over quickly, my hands trembling slightly as I took out the phone, but when I saw the screen, it was not her, it was a message from Dad. And for a moment I just stared at his name glowing on the screen, feeling the familiar sting of disappointment waiting beneath the surface. And I opened the message slowly, bracing myself for whatever truth or cruelty or justification he had decided to send. The message was short and cold and it said stay away tonight is for family, and reading those words felt like a punch to the chest because the implication was clear. He no longer saw me as part of the family, not even enough to acknowledge the love I carried, not even enough to hide the exclusion behind softer words, and I felt a deep tremor inside me because there was something different about reading the words stay away from the man who once lifted me onto his shoulders and taught me how to ride a bike and now treated me like an unwanted guest at my own mother's celebration. I locked the phone and placed it face down on the seat because looking at it felt unbearable, and I leaned back, closing my eyes, letting the cool quiet of the night settle around me, reminding me that even in the middle of heartbreak the world keeps breathing, and I reminded myself that pain is temporary even when it feels endless, and that the love I had for Mom was still real, still strong, still alive, even if I could not step into that house tonight. And I whispered softly to myself, you are enough. You always were, because I needed to hear those words from someone, even if that someone was me. I drove back toward my apartment, slowly letting the weight of the night settle in my chest like a heavy memory I would carry for years. And when I reached my building, I turned off the car but stayed inside for a moment, feeling the silence wrap around me like a quiet blanket. And I realized that tonight might be one of the loneliest nights of my life, but it was also a turning point because I had to choose whether to let this moment define me or break me. And I told myself that I would not let the rejection hollow me out, even though it already carved deep lines through my heart. I walked up the stairs feeling tired with every step, and when I finally entered my apartment, the stillness felt different, not painful but peaceful, as if this place knew my wounds and knew how to hold them gently. And I placed the card and flowers on the table carefully, as if they were fragile pieces of a life I was still learning how to navigate, and I whispered happy birthday again, softer this time, letting the words float into the quiet room, and I imagined them reaching her somehow, not through distance, not through walls, but through the bond that had kept us connected long before the world complicated everything. I sat on the couch, letting the quiet settle around me, and I realized people who see you, who hear you, and who accept your heart without judgment. And pain teaches us what loyalty really means, and distance teaches us what peace really feels like. And even when the ones you call family turn their backs on you, the universe still holds room for you to heal and rise and become someone stronger than the version they tried to break. And in the end, the truth is simple: your worth is not measured by who abandons you, but by how you rise after they leave. And sometimes losing your family is the only way to find yourself again.